Small question, shouldn't take us too long. We can knock this one out. What's the end game? The end game as a leader. So they
That's a small one, huh?
That's just a simple question.
Yeah.
Easy.
What's the end game as a leader?
All right, well, welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. Today we have a little of the same concept as we've done before, where it's a roundtable. We all kind of go around and share our thoughts and ideas. We're doing a story episode today. We are pretty early on in the podcast, so we haven't gotten a lot of submissions yet. So I did some risky business, and we're actually diving into some stories from Reddit. On the leadership subreddit. I don't know if have y'all ever looked into the Reddit side of leadership? Have y'all ever dove into that?
I don't know that I have read it, but I don't know that. No, let's go with no.
No.
Okay. Well, it's a new one for me, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I have a few submissions here that piqued my interest, and we're just going to go around and kind of answer the questions as they stand. I forgot to do intros, so today it's just going to be myself, Eric, and Tony joining us, and we're going to jump into one that I think is the most interesting right off the bat here, because there could be a lot of different answers. But the first one, how can leadership in startups balance a fast-paced environment with building a strong and supportive culture? So right whenever you're starting a business, you have that kind of necessity to ramp things up, put systems in place, operations in place. But also what people struggle with is finding that balance of, I need to do this, but I also know that I need a healthy culture. How do we focus on both at the same time in a startup environment?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that we didn't get the questions in advance.
No, yeah,
so this is straight off the cuff. So
could be all the wrong answers.
However, it's funny when you're saying that, and I don't think a lot of startups have very healthy cultures.
Yeah.
Okay.
And notoriously not the greatest.
In some ways, it's counterintuitive, right? So culture takes time. It takes building relationship. It takes, so if you start a business and you've got you and a bunch of friends, you're probably going to find out all the worst sides of your friends.
Yeah.
And if you're starting a business with people from the outside, now you're going through storming, norming, performing, all the things a team goes through. And so we're developing a team around this from scratch, and we've got all this work to do and all those things. So my first thought when you said that got into managing expectations. It's like, have the conversation before you get into it. So if they're coming on board, yeah, it's a startup. Different people have different perception of what that means and what the culture looks like. So what do you want the culture to look like? How are meetings run? How are they held? How do we treat each other? If I'm the CEO, do I, in a healthy way, invite the feedback and the pushback and all those things? Or is it like we see on movies and TV where you've got some chaotic, big picture thinker that's starting this thing and their behavior's terrible with their team and the team can't talk to them, and it's like,
but they're getting the job done,
So I mean, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't. What it needs to be is it needs to be in a place where people feel safe to voice their opinion, and they feel that, they know the expectations, can manage them getting in. They know the dedication level and what the payoff is. You get into a startup, you don't get into it necessarily for the culture. You get into it for the payoff.
Yeah,
I'm gonna deal with hell for a little while so that the payoff is worth it. At least that's my understanding. I mean, I'm sure there's different situations.
I'm going to jump in on there and say, yes, there are different situations, because obviously my story, Eric. I started a nonprofit and we built a team really quickly because we needed to serve schools and kids and get people on the field teaching these kids life lessons. And we made it up as we went along. I mean, it was bootstrapping, who's going to raise the money, who's going to be on the field, who's going to be doing all of this. And it's a lot of the time... you're right for the payoff, But for us, it was the bigger mission and vision of being the payoff. Seeing kids' lives transformed was what brought people to the program every day and got us to push through the crap that was going on. Because I was leading, but I was leading without really knowing what I was doing half the time. So much of what I ended up doing was listening to my staff. Just sit back, listen to them. What are the needs? Where are they going? How can I help support them? And I think that's part of the answer is yes, the payoff, but then also if you're the man, take some time and listen to what they have to say because it will serve you well.
Yeah,
great advice.
It sounds like what we're saying is that it's okay to be okay with a little bit of imbalance with like you're putting. I've talked to a few people who have they're trying to grow their business, but then they've struggled with, well, how do I make sure that I'm making sure everybody's healthy on the team? And I don't know if this is the right mindset, and you guys can obviously push back, but the metaphor I've used before is that it's hard to fill up two buckets at the same time with the same hose. Where like, yeah, you could split the stream and you could fill both buckets up, but they're both going to go slowly. It's okay to focus on, hey, we just need to ramp things up. We need to put systems in place. We have to focus on what we are doing, the work we're doing. And then when that plateaus or when we decide we can take our foot off the gas, then we can move the hose to the other bucket and be like, okay, now we can build culture. We can focus on team initiatives. We can do all that stuff and then switch back to the ramping things up again. Is that a fair estimate of kind of where we're landing with this?
I'm going to jump in. Yeah. I'm going to just jump in and say that's where Eric is right in as much as set the expectations straight off the bat, because you are going to you're going to have to split. Yeah, you're going to have to split your time and energy because there's going to be some time spent on pure growth, and it's got to be growing the organization and doing whatever it can to grow it, and then when that's grown to a degree where it can support, then we might need to come back and look at systems and putting the systems in place to kind of help with the growth. And then we have to track back and now grow on culture and then go back into growth again. But setting those expectations up early to know which bucket you're going to be in, super important.
You can do it nicely or you can do it so like you can be. So how do people function under stress and high pressure? Because that's what startup is. It's switching back and forth. And I think I picture like somebody, you're going two buckets. I'm like, if you're gonna fill them both at the same time, it's hard, virtually impossible. But you can while you're pushing for high performance. And I mean, Tony, great example, right? They're doing it in nonprofit, so it's purpose driven. But you can do it nicely. You know, you can, because everybody's under stress and pressure. And how are you going to show up under stress and pressure? You can do it nicely, which does actually fill both at the same time, but it's not the main focus. Yeah. So anyway,
it's good. All right. Ironically, that post was submitted by the user "Great Place to Work." So I don't know what that means from them. All right, so we're moving into another one that's a little complicated. It's got some depth, so we'll see if we can tackle it in 10 minutes. It's from CG 1988. It says, "Hello all. I've been a plant manager for 4 years and have had a total of 130 employees who report to me. Our warehouse was in such a negative spot when I got promoted that the first couple of years I had easy quote wins by refining certain processes." But now I'm having issues developing a vision for the plant and changing the culture. I feel our supervisors and floor-level employees will do the right thing when I'm around, but if they can get away with something, then they will. How do I develop a culture and continue to raise the bar so that way we can continue to get better? So, and the title here is how to develop a vision. So it's a pretty deep question here.
Yeah, I don't know if he's asking the right question, how to develop a vision. So,
all right.
You ready to jump in, Tony, or you want me to run?
I was just going to say, I would want to answer that. I'd want to know what the plant was doing and what they were making, what was going on there, because there's a vision in anything you do. What's the end result? How are you making the world a better place? Focus on that. There's your vision. But that's just my simplistic answer. I'll let Eric run with it because he's got more depth than me.
I got more depth. Well, let's start with 130 to 1 reporting structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Never gonna work.
Which it can't. It can't be that. It has to be like there has to be mid-level managers that he's not.
All right, so we're going to make that assumption. I have been in a few places, especially manufacturing and mining, believe it or not, where you've got this giant group of people reporting to one, and they kind of self-manage through each area.
Yeah,
you don't. There's no way you're going to get. Of course, they're going to say one thing and do something different because there's just no accountability that's going on. But let's assume that there are all those 130. Let's say there's 100 people and there's 20 or 30 other mid-level people that are in there. You got to start with the mid-level people and actually get buy-in, So how many direct reports does he have or she have? Mm-hmm. And if it's 5 or 10, something manageable, if that's where we're at, then I'm focusing my energy there with that group. Get them hyper committed, get them hyper bought in. Talk about, and when you go creating a vision, you get into purpose. Why are we doing this? What are the outcomes? What are the behaviors we're looking for? That he gave one or she gave one where it was, they're doing this and I want them to do this. I want it to be more authentic and they're not doing something behind my back. But that's in most companies considered normal. That would be the average organization is that so he's looking for a super engaged workforce, one that is bought in, one that isn't running around with massive amounts of gossip, that they're solving problems. So you get your leadership team bought in, and then you go down to that level and you start helping them. You bring the problems to them. You go, hey, we got a problem with shift changes at this point. Mm-hmm. And we're struggling to figure it out. You put everybody in the room that's affected by it and you start going, well, what would you do? And you start getting their ideas. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but it's like you want to get a super engaged group, involve them in some of it. Lead diplomatically versus autocratically or laissez-faire. So as much as you can, be that person that's bringing them into the conversation, some of the decisions versus coming in and dictating where it's going.
Yeah. So what would you say what would you say rather than good luck? If it was just them being the direct report to 130 employees?
Then I would change the structure. Then I would go, and let's say I don't have pay to do that. I would change the structure through title. So I'd have leads in every 6 to 10 people or work group or whatever. We'd have a lead, someone there that we're going, that's the role model, that's the trainer, that's the whatever it is. And even if I don't have the pay to go with it, I tell them up front and go, this is kind of a chance for you to get seen. It's a chance to work with it. There's no pay in it. You can turn it down, kind of work from that. But you got to create some structure to where there's somebody in there with some accountability. Because at 135, if you were just going to meet with your team one-on-one, okay, just have a one-on-one meeting. I want to know your goals. Here's our goals. Here's some accountability behind it. And it's a 30-minute meeting. You've got a plan. What is that? 73 or 8 hours? I don't know. I'm doing math. But, you got a plan. That's 2 weeks worth of work. Just do it. It's not realistic. You're never going to do it, and you're going to be exhausted by the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I think we did miss because he does say, they say, I feel our supervisors and floor-level employees will do the right thing when I'm around, but if they can get away with it, then something... then they will. So I'm hoping that there is that supervisor level in the midst there. And so we're saying focus on the supervisors first and foremost. Set the culture, set the vision with them. Were you also saying let them be involved in what the vision is as well?
For
so
sure.
That you create that buy-in?
Well, and this comes back to what we said, fixing the last problem with me and the nonprofit. I spoke to the staff and said, what do you want? What do you need? Where's this going for you? You've got to get them to voice what they want and their needs.
Yeah. People go, I want to change a culture, which 130 people, there's a culture that's in there. I want to change this culture from doing this to doing that. Well, and they go, okay, well, I've decided I want to change here. So they go tell everybody we're going to change here. That's not how human beings work. One of our
Yeah.
biggest motivators is autonomy. We have to choose. We have to want to. And so how do we do that? Well, we're part of that solution. We're part of what the outcome is.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to change a culture, I always picture, so if you had like see if I can get in the camera here. If you had a little bell curve, right? You got it like going like, that's a typical bell curve. Okay, there.
Yeah.
That's my visual for the show. If you put 20% of your culture, they're your champions. They're the ones that you can walk out of the room and they're going to crush it no matter what. They're not talking behind your back. They're not changing the script. They don't have their own initiatives. They're bought in. They're on it. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the average culture, 20%. And then the other end, you got 20%. They're the naysayers. They're pretty much fighting against you in a lot of ways. On the engaged, disengaged, actively disengaged. Maybe they fall in that actively disengaged where they're that part of that group that's not. You want to change the culture, people go and they fight against that 20% that's disengaged. And it's a black hole. You put your time and your energy into it. You might make a little shift, but more than likely you're not.
Yeah.
You put it in at the 20% at the top, and they're already doing it. That's just fun. That just feels good.
A lot of people, I've seen a lot of people get stuck there, where it's like you have this team that you're invested in, and everybody's loving life, but then you have that last group, that is
it's the 60 in the middle,
the in betweens.
That's where if you put the time and energy into that 60%, and let's say you only move 20% of that 60%. Well, now you're starting to create critical change. People are starting to see it, and they're starting to go, "Hey, I don't want to be left behind." They start stepping into it. You start to create buy-in. What were you going to say there, Tony?
I'm going to also add to that is the fact that that's a lot of schools are set up that way. By the way, you've got your high-performing kids. They're the kids who are your 20% high performers. Everything's going well for them. They are super engaged, and they get a bunch of extra stuff to help them with their education and don't really need it. And then the other end is you got the 20% who are dropping out and not doing much at school. They're your high flyers in your principal's office, and so they get a whole lot of resources to try and move them up. But as you said, it's a black hole. What about the big 60% in the middle? When if you just shifted 20% of those average performers at school into the top percentile, then suddenly you've changed school. It's massive. But we don't put enough resource in our education on the middle 60%. It either goes to the bottom or to the top.
Yeah, business works the same way, for sure.
Yep.
I love that. Focus on the middle 60. Fantastic. All right, moving on. We got one submitted here by Denise at 9458. Small question, shouldn't take us too long. We can knock this one out. What's the end game? The end game as a leader. So they
That's a small one, huh?
That's just a simple question.
Yeah.
Easy.
What's the end game as a leader? Like in regards,
so they outline it a little bit. They detail it a bit more. So they say, I just started as a leader, and it's okay. It's stressful, but I don't hate it. But I think part of my problem is, what do I want out of it? Better position equals more money, but more stress. Credit for my accomplishments equals great, but temporary. Do any of you guys have anything you want to achieve which keeps you motivated to lead well?
Okay, hold on. This whole thing is, my opinion, just framed completely wrong. Okay, so so when you're talking, you're basically going, what's the ROI of going through the pain and agony of being a leader?
Yeah.
And as soon as you're doing that, you're focused on the pain and agony. And honestly, it isn't a math formula that maths out. The math will not math.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to actually like what you're doing. Like if you're connected to it and it fills you up and you're going into it and you're going, if you're doing it because I make more money and I feel more significant and I get those are drivers for human beings, but if that's why I'm put myself in a leadership management position, and really what they're saying, at least what I hear and what's going on there, is they're like, gosh, this is really stressful. It's more than I'm comfortable with. And so I can hold on to it's like they're white knuckling the steering wheel for a while. I can do this for a while, but somebody tell me it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're already in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to question, like, well, wait a minute. How long am I driving for? Is there an exit I can get off of eventually?
Right. That's like, okay, so use the driving analogy. That's like, okay, I'm going to start driving, and where I'm going, I'm excited about getting there, whatever that is. Okay, and we're in the middle of driving. We're like, maybe I'm not really excited about where I'm going because this driving is my butt hurts, and there's too many rest stops, and it just. The reality is, and I don't know this. I don't, and I don't want to make the assumption, but but I'm going to say it is that my assumption is this person may not have a crazy amount of experience in dealing with the challenges that come with leadership. So it may feel overwhelming. It may feel like a lot. And I would say if you really are excited about leadership, not just because it pays more, not just because of the status, but you really are, you want to see the lights come on for others. You want to watch initiatives take place. You want to see others be successful, and you want to be a part of that and help direct that, cast visions, and be responsible for making sure everything moves forward and more, right? If those are the things that get you excited because you like to do them, and you're in this and you're going, holy crap, it's a lot of work, I would say keep holding on to the steering wheel, because it does get easier, but in the beginning it's a lot of, you're kind of in the deep end and you got to swim your way out.
Yeah.
However, if you're not motivated that way, if you're not excited about those things, and you're just like, I just want more money, but I'd really rather start my own quilting store and have no employees, then
that's okay too.
That's perfectly okay, but you got to really do that inner work of going, who am I? What do I really want? What's my purpose? And when you have those are solid, then the rest of this gets easy. It's like, I know who I am, so therefore does management and leadership fit into that all day long? But if
I would come back as well and say, add to that, during our bold class, we go into your why. If you haven't figured your why out when you're in a leadership role, then you are going to be white knuckling that car ride all the way. Why are you sitting in that seat?
I think the danger zone here is that they may have answered their why, but their why was to become a leader. Mm-hmm. And then you get on the other side of that and you're like, wait a minute, what else is over here? Like, there's what am I doing now? Like, what's the next? What's the end game?
I got more responsibility. I make a little bit more. Occasionally, I get some praise, and I'm exhausted. And I really have to focus and work here. I get less vacations. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So in game is same for any role. In game is, does this really fill me up and fulfill my purpose, where I'm going, who I am? And when those actually interact well, then you'll white knuckle it through it and it gets easier. And if not, find what is.
And
I've
we
actually done this before.
We can't. I was going to just say, we can't end this without saying it's also a really fantastic Marvel movie.
What? In game? Oh.
Oh my gosh!
Cut that part out, Connor. What were you saying?
Well, I've actually been in that position before. I used to. I worked at a software company once, and I came in as just a junior QA, and then 3 seniors and the manager all left within like 2 to 3 months of each other. And so I was put in the position just by proxy of like, hey, do you want to, there was a few months that went by, they were looking for managers and nobody really came up. So they were like, hey, do you want to be a manager? And my initial reaction, because at that time in my life, I'd worked at Chick-fil-A. I was a teacher before that. So I'd been in these positions of leadership. I knew it was on the other side. And so at that moment, I had to really ask myself, do I want that specifically within this company? I know what's on the other side in terms of a pay rise and, the responsibility and all that other stuff. But do I want to be at the helm and representing the culture that I know is here? And do I want to put on that responsibility when I don't really need to? And very counter culture to myself at the time, I turned it down. I was like, no, I'm actually okay. And then I had to be okay with whoever they brought in to be the manager. But so sometimes it's just the company that you're in may not be exactly what you want, because then I moved on and I was in other companies where it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I want to lead more people and I want to build the culture. So you could, if you're listening to this and you're in a position where you have the opportunity to be a leader, I think you have to also ask yourself, like, do you want to be the foreperson of the culture that the business has already set in place? Does it align with where you're at, or do you just recognize that you may need to, move somewhere else that more aligns with your vision and your own personal values, and then become a leader in that organization rather than maybe where you're at.
It's really good.
So
yeah,
it's a tricky business.
yeah, good times.
The end game. I knew y'all were gonna like that. It's like, what's like, now that I'm here, what's the purpose?
What's the end game? What's the end game to leadership? I'm like, I don't really know that one, but
That's awesome. Well, this was fun, guys. I know that was this is a quick episode, but we want to hear from you guys as well, the listener. So make sure to be sending in your submissions any way you can. We have a form online. We have you can leave a comment on wherever you're listening to the podcast, or you can send it to info@drivenleadership.com. We've covered the easy question of what's the end game as a leader, so we're excited to hear what comes next.
let's go.
All right, Tony, Eric, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next episode, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.